All right. Hey, Weston, thank you for joining me today on my podcast. So, today we're going to be talking about residential high efficient boilers, a topic that I'm sure people have heard quite a bit about over the past 15 years or so. And so, anyway, I've asked Weston to come on with me today because he's my expert. He's my resident expert. He's from Bradford White. And so, Weston, why don't you just take a minute, give everyone a little feel for who you are, what it is that you do, and a little pitch on Bradford.
Sure. So my name's Weston French. I am the regional sales manager for Bradford White and Laars Heating Systems specialty products, which is what we're talking about today. Residential, commercial boilers, indirect storage tanks, and tankless water heaters. So as I said, I cover the Mid-Atlantic. I work with rep agencies such as Rathe and several others throughout the Mid-Atlantic states to help sell, support, install, just about anything that comes along with buying a Bradford White or Laars Heating Systems boiler product.
Perfect. All right, man. So you are my go-to guy. You're the perfect person for this conversation. So I warn everybody, I think this conversation, so I want to talk to everyone or talk to Weston about I guess issues and stuff. But at the end of the day, we are going to definitely address the things that Bradford and Laars bring to the table in their products. All right, so we are going to be getting into some specs on the products and what makes them so great. But Weston, you travel all around, like you said, the Mid-Atlantic there. I'm sure you get different things from different people, but in terms of condensing boilers, residential condensing high efficient equipment. When I say boilers, I kind of mean that, loosely, water heaters, combis. What is it that, I don't know, causing people the most headaches? What are contractors looking for these days? What are you finding?
So, I've found that a lot's changed, obviously. So, as you said, the last 15, 20 years, maybe a little bit more than that, the U.S. market's been gearing towards high efficiency everything, whether it be boilers, cars, water heaters, everything is geared to become more and more efficient. So, with Bradford and with Laars, we've committed to kind of diving into that future type of product, the high efficiency, the 95% stuff. So what I've seen from guys out in the field is, first off, ease of install. How can we make this as simple as possible? Some might say plug and play, but what makes our products easier than our competition? What bridges the gap between old technology and new technology? And some of that stuff we're going to talk about in a couple minutes here. But again, whether it be piping, whether it be venting, really guys are eager to learn and kind of find out what the new technology might provide that old technology didn't. What are some of the differences on the install and the service side, because there are many that differentiate old non-condensing cast iron boilers to now the new age 95% stuff.
So let me ask this. So I've been in the commercial world more than anything, so I don't have my fingers nearly on the pulse of it. But I want to say that the thing I hear about more than anything everywhere is the three-way valves. The three-way valves for Combi units tend to be a headache. Is that still the case? Is it more people complaining? Is it a real issue? And what's the deal?
So I think three-way valves have always been a necessary evil when you talk about high efficiency combi boilers.
And you want to just explain it even? Maybe there's a couple people listening who don't even know what that piece is for.
Yeah, so basically, historically in combi high efficiency boilers, three-way valves are used to divert BTUs from your space heating call to your domestic call. And in the historic sense of combis, generally you can't have one and the other at the same time simultaneously. So in the middle of winter, when you're working on a heating call and you have a shower call or a domestic hot water call, historically, again, you lose your heating call to get that domestic call for that run cycle.
Right, the three-way valve will redirect it toward a heat exchanger, right?
Exactly. And I think the big difference that we've used with the Bradford White and Laars Combi boilers is we use a different heat exchanger, where historically combis use flat plate heat exchangers or brazed plate heat exchangers. We've transferred into what we call a shell and coil design. It's almost like a little indirect tank inside of your boiler. And
Perfect.
there's a lot of benefits to that. The first of which is we have a wall hung and a floor stand boiler. In our floor stand boiler, that's our newest residential product. We've had that out for about 5 years now. We actually were able to use our different heat exchanger than what's historically been used with the shell and coil to eliminate the three-way valve entirely out of our floor combi boiler.
Let me even just stop you for a second. So, because I want to get right back to that. Why? So I understand the purpose of the three-way valve. Why does it historically cause issues? Why does it fail? And then we'll slide into just, I guess, why the benefit of doing the indirect and why we wouldn't necessarily need a three-way valve in that case. So why does it fail?
Sure. So the failure point of the three-way valve is that it's constantly moving. Moving components have a tendency to fail because they're constantly being exercised back and forth between space heating and domestic calls. Now, a lot of times you might not have a problem with a three-way valve, but they're susceptible to clogging and they're susceptible to getting stuck in one position or the other. If that happens, then you're stuck in a domestic call or you're stuck in a space heating call. So, worst case, you got a summer vacation home and you go to call for hot water and your valve is stuck in heating mode and your house is ramping up to 90 degrees in the
Right.
summer versus it operating properly and giving you domestic hot water. So
Is
that's
there also let's say in the summertime, the only demand essentially is domestic hot water. Does it get stuck in that one position?
It could, and that's potentially one of the failure points of three-way valves. Is if we're stuck in a domestic call for 3 or 4 months or whatever your summer season is, it could potentially get stuck in that position. Now, with our wall hung boilers, different than our floor stand boilers, we do have a three-way valve, and something that we added to that unit probably about 5 years ago was an exercise function. So in applications like that, our wall hung boiler will exercise itself on a daily basis to make sure that it can open and close as needed for when you do turn that heat back on. You're not going to be stuck in that domestic window. So it's a bit of a fail safe for us on what is a commonly failing component. It gives us a little bit more leeway because we're exercising that valve and making
Right.
sure that it isn't being stuck in one position.
Perfect. All right. So exercise it, keeps it going good. All right. Now I think this is the cool one. Let's swing over to that indirect. So why'd you guys go with the indirect tank? And then how did you now go like, oh, okay, we don't even need this three-way?
Okay, so yeah, this is the most exciting point of our boiler on the floor FT combi, and as we discussed earlier, the three-way valve, a failure point. So we mentioned that we took that three-way valve out of the floor boiler. The way that we've done that is pretty unique to us. So as we mentioned, historically, flat plate heat exchangers or brazed plates have been used for domestic on combi boilers. We now use this shell and coil design, like a little indirect tank with a coil internally to process your hot water. Now, the benefit of that is versus a flat plate, we have stored capacity. So we were able to pipe into that cylinder, much like a hydraulic separator external to a unit that you could buy out from your wholesaler. So what it's doing is it's handling that primary, secondary piping that everybody talks about when it comes to wall hung high efficiency boilers. Generally, you will need primary, secondary piping or closely spaced tees entering the bottom of a wall hung boiler to make it operate properly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with our design, we were able to build that into the boiler. So not
Right,
only
and
do
and
we,
so and I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt,
yeah,
but
go
yeah, I
ahead.
mean, you probably just see it so many times, so it's just so maybe second nature to you. But I mean, the closely spaced tees. I mean, hopefully people listening to this is familiar with it. But one of the major, I guess, issues with I'll say high efficient equipment, wall hung equipment, is that you really are supposed to pipe it in this primary secondary way, and it's an issue because so many people get into this and just don't follow the instructions, and it's everything from the way you pipe the primary secondary, which, as Weston had said, it might be a pair of like closely spaced tees going to a manifold, and then there's a lot of other installation hiccups that people have. But to his point, and I'm just trying to maybe paint a nice picture for people, rather than that internal pump feeding into a manifold, a primary secondary manifold that would be external to the boiler, instead that internal primary pump will feed into that indirect. And just as Weston had mentioned, the indirect is ultimately kind of like a little hydro separator, right? So you will have the primary pump that feeds into that then well, it's an indirect hydro separator that will store that hot water for domestic, but then it'll have the other ports within there that your other pumps out for your system will flow through. So now, really, when you install that boiler, you don't have to worry about all that manifold, the primary, secondary, but you'll have the additional pumps, the pumps that feed out to your various zones. They'll just pipe right into it like a traditional cast iron type of system. Did I get that right? Did I miss anything? Or
You nailed it, Greg.
all right,
Yeah, you're spot on.
there's hope for me yet.
Part of that is when we designed this boiler, the ease of install and the serviceability came to mind, and I think we did a nice job of kind of reinventing what is the common high efficiency combi boiler, and used a little bit of a different mousetrap. So with a lot of the stuff that we've said, the no three-way valve, the primary secondary piping now built in, the whole thought process behind this unit was make it as easy as possible. We talk a lot about older guys that are used to your conventional cast iron boilers. This makes it feel like an old school conventional non-condensing cast iron boiler when you're installing it. So instead of having to buy a manifold or spend more time and material effort on piping the boiler, we're going to pipe in much like a conventional cast iron boiler. 1.5 supply and return tappings right off the top of the unit, and no manifold going into it. So a lot of labor savings, a lot of material savings, but in my opinion, the best part of it is it simplifies everything.
Yeah, I really love it because, like, yeah, I mean, it simplifies it, and it just makes it more natural. So when somebody, doesn't follow the instructions, they're doing it the old school way. So it's like, why force everyone to try and figure out a new way of doing things? Let's just manufacture it to the way that people like to do it, the way that people are comfortable with. So I love it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's and exactly the point. It's a lot of thinking about what the end user is going to want during the install and the application side of things. And in reality, we're accomplishing a lot more than what our high efficiency combis have been able to do. And we've done that by taking problematic components and processes out of the equation. So piping's easier, less moving components like the three-way valve and internal mixing valve on our floor boilers. So again, where everybody else with a three-way valve is either going to get heating or domestic hot water, we now have the ability to give you both simultaneously.
I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so again, I think we did a nice job simplifying the boiler. It's well thought out, but we're achieving more with less problematic components that could cause issues and callbacks later on down the road.
Yeah, and you know what I was thinking about? There's another feature that I think makes it more traditional feeling. I mean, the guy still has to pipe it in there unless you guys start to install this. But you got that extra space at the base of the unit, right? For the condensate.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of the serviceability and the ease feel to things come to mind. So when Greg mentions our space for a condensate pump, we actually have added some access panels for multiple different reasons. The first two sit high up on the jacket above the heat exchanger. So you've got a left hand and a right hand access panel for serviceability. If you have to go in and change a part or service a heat exchanger, you've got access on all three, the front and the sides of the jacket, to get in and get that service work done. And I know I'm straying away from the access panel for the condensate pump, but it kind of made me think about the other access panels as well.
Sure.
So by design, high efficiency wall hung boilers have always been very tight. They've been space saving technologies. A lot of homeowners like them because they're up off the floor. They're not a big beast in the basement. So that's a big selling point to the wall hung systems. Now, the problem with that is you pack so much into such a small condensed jacket, it becomes harder and harder to work on. So where a lot of manufacturers have thought of, oh, the size is great, but the service guy going back to the unit's going to have a hard time getting a pump out or an igniter out per se. So with that said, we've got some more serviceability access points, make it easier on you throughout the lifetime of the install of one of our boilers. Now, back to your initial point, the access panel in the bottom right of our floor boiler is actually used so you can put a condensate pump neutralizer into the boiler. And what we've done is we added a power receptacle with two outlets inside of the jacket of the boiler and a void of space under the heat exchanger. So you can put that condensate pump / neutralizer into the footprint of the boiler, plug it in, and then button up the access panel on the right hand side. And at the end of the day, it's not something that's sitting on the floor or hanging on the wall. It looks very clean to the homeowner that you're installing the product in their home. But it also gives us a nice clean feel, nothing on the ground, nothing on the floor that can be tampered with, kind of condensing it all into one box.
Yeah, I really like the point that you mentioned there, just like it looking clean, but it looking clean to the homeowner. Because like just a personal story, you know, like my father-in-law, my in-laws, we literally just yesterday replacing the boiler in their house, and man, it was so we live in Long Island, so they had their equipment from it was a post Sandy kind of job, so it was a mess of a job. But it got them through for 12 years or so. But it was just so many things are wacky. The old boiler's wacky. But by the time I realized when I was there, I'm like, you don't have a condensate a neutralizer. They just didn't have one at all. And so we got one put in there, and it's just like there was no place to put it. So they kind of an odd installation. They had to build a shelf out and kind of put in this dumb spot. And to your point, like, man, if it was just able to be built right in there, just out of the eyesight for the end user, it's just the little touches, I think, that could just make the job just that much better for the end user and for the contractor doing the install.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a clean looking, working install is what a homeowner's looking for. So the cleaner it looks at the end of the day, the happier your homeowner's going to be. And a story of mine, actually out in your territory, I was talking to a contractor and a homeowner simultaneously, and I always think back to boilers as the Macaulay Culkin scene from Home Alone, where he goes down and he sees the furnace in the basement, and it scares the crap out of him, so he runs back up, and he's always afraid of that big scary furnace.
Right.
This homeowner had told me that the unit itself looks like a mini fridge. It's all white, it's very clean looking, and they went downstairs the one day, and their little kids were sticking magnets to the side of it. So the difference from what we used to see in basements to now what we're installing in basements, one scared Macaulay Culkin, and the other one looks like a mini fridge that you can stick magnets on.
Right. Yeah. Things have definitely come a long way. So, what are the other things that we want to touch on this on the floor standing unit? Is there any other little knickknacks that we ought to quickly address?
Um, Let me think here. So, one thing is field convertibility. So depending on where you are, you might be dealing with natural gas or you might be dealing with liquid propane. With either our wall hung or our floor stand residential boilers, everything you need to do a field conversion on the gas is included in the box. It's an orifice change and a dip switch flip. It's very easy. There's no springs or components that need to be tampered with inside of the unit. So field convertibility is very big for us. And then some other little stuff. We use a CAD cell flame sensor instead of a traditional flame rod, which has a tendency to warp and get bent out of shape and not rectify. Our CAD cell little eye that we use as a flame sensor doesn't make contact to flame. So there's less likelihood for scale buildup or warping out of shape. Really, the only time that I've seen one of our flame sensors fail is because the heat exchanger needed a service and it was blocked up for site. So
Yeah,
if nothing else,
and
it's
I'm
a
gonna
good.
stop you because you said that's a little thing. That you have a component in there that historically is a you know replacement component, a maintenance component that is not anymore. So that's actually, I'd say, a big thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's something that generally and historically you go out and you say service a high efficiency boiler. The flame sensor is definitely something that you're taking out and at least at minimum inspecting, let alone cleaning or replacing. With ours, generally, if you get a flame sensor code, it's just an indicator that it's time for service and to flush out the fire side of the heat exchanger so we can get site back to our flame sensor. So again, to your point, what was a commonly replaced point in boilers with flame sensors is now not normally a problem with either of our FT products.
That's major. All right, what else do you have? All right, I'm gonna list off one or two things that maybe I know we haven't gotten to, and I certainly know it's on the wall hung. Tell me if it's on the floor mount. There's the gas sniffer. There's the laminated control board, and then combustion air filter.
Yeah. So all good points. The first one, the gas sniffer, is what we like to call it. It might not be the technical term for it, but basically it's a safety precaution. So on our boards that you would see off the front of our boilers, we have a gas detection sensor. So if you have a combustion leak or a cracked exhaust vent and there's gas leaking inside of the jacket, the boiler will lock itself out as a safety precaution. So if nothing else for homeowners, gives them a little bit of peace of mind that if there were, God forbid, a gas leak inside of one of our boilers, it has the brain and the wherewithal to shut itself off before anything becomes a catastrophic failure. And then to your other points, the laminated board, our boards are laminated, so they're water resistant. If you were to have a leak inside of the system, that coating is going to protect the board from any sort of significant failure or board replacement needs. And then finally, your reference to the intake air screen filter. It's something that we added when we came out with the floor boiler about 5 years ago. Now our wall hungs and floor boilers both have intake air screen filters. But the idea with that is it's a level of protection from anything from birds' nests, wood chips, PVC shavings, anything that might get sucked into the intake side of the boiler and create damage over time to the heat exchanger. We've added an intake air screen filter that's external to the jacket, easy to access. It's two Phillips head screws, and the cartridge pulls right out of the intake housing on top of the unit. But it gives you a layer of protection and more lifetime potentially in the unit, because we're going to protect it from sucking anything in from the outside air or the garden that the venting is sitting above, and that won't find its way into our heat exchanger and create more problems over the lifetime of the unit.
By the way, a testament to your equipment. So the vent on my boiler, the bird screen was missing, and I found out one day because as I'm going past my vent outside, what do I see but a bird fly into it, and so I have like one of those the T kind of vents terminations, and so I look up and I just see a little like a twig or stick. I'm like, oh man, he's building a little nest. So I pull, and man, when I start pulling, it is a bird's nest. It is full. So I end up pulling the whole thing. I'm telling you, man, it's embarrassing to say, but the entire thing was nothing but bird's nest. I don't know how they were even getting in and doing anything in there, but the boiler worked. The boiler had no issues. I cleared the whole thing out. I mean, it was like probably 3 feet of bird's nest. But it's a test.
Wow.
Good equipment.
That's that high quality fan that we've got inside of there.
Exactly. So, all right, I don't want to drag it out too much longer. I was just spending a bit of time just now while you were going over that, writing down a bullet point list of the things that we went over, because I did not even realize as we were like preparing for this that we were going to get into so much, and it's unbelievable. So I'm going to list these things off. You got the laminated board, protects it from any spills, from the control board kind of frying. You got that gas sniffer. You got a combustion air filter, stopping any crud from getting into that heat exchanger. You have space for a condensate pump as well as outlets pre-built in there, so just making a nice, clean, easy installation. You have an indirect tank that, we didn't even talk about this, and I'm just going to even say it. Here's the other beauty of the indirect tank as opposed to the heat exchanger, the braze plate. You don't have that cold water sandwich. You always have hot water readily available. And for anyone who doesn't know what a cold water sandwich is, somebody showers, let's say, and you have hot water in the pipes, right? So now, whatever, a couple of minutes goes by, next person goes to shower. That hot water travels from the pipes to the shower. Okay, I can hop in, I'm comfortable and hot. But simultaneously, before the boiler turned on, cold water made its way into that boiler and out. The boiler did not turn on, so the water was not able to come up to temperature. And then so now you have the hot that was in the pipes, that cold water that came through, followed by the water that is now getting heated up. So you have that hot water sandwich that is just so common from these braze plate designs. The indirect completely gets rid of that as well. So that's another sweet feature.
And to that point, yes, we have about a gallon of stored hot water that's sitting and waiting for a call. So above and beyond the cold water sandwich effects, the dips and swings in temperature when you're in a shower, another big point that I like to make is quicker reaction time off of the first call for heat. So without a three-way valve, we don't have to divert BTUs and refire the boiler to meet that domestic demand. We can easily and seamlessly go into a domestic call. So big complaint with Combi boilers on the high efficiency side of things has always been there's a delay window, much like tankless water heaters. they are flow activated. So it takes some time to get to
Right.
fixtures after the boiler fires. So a big complaint that we hear from homeowners historically is you took out a tank type water heater and you put a combi in. That tank type water heater might have had 40 or 50 gallons of
Right.
stored hot water waiting for a call. So the reaction time's a lot faster. It just has to make its way to that fixture. With our boiler, with this little tank, this buffer tank or the storage tank inside of it, you now have that hot water waiting for a call. So the first time that the homeowner calls for hot water, it's going to feel a lot like a tank type heater in the sense of reaction time to fixtures and the quickness of the hot water getting to you. Where everybody else or a flat plate type combi system would have a delay window. So it might be a
Yeah.
20 or 30-second delay.
I love it. I mean, that indirect just solves so much. So again, I'm going to go through that list again. The laminated board, the gas sniffer, combustion air filter. You've got that space in there for the condensate pump with the outlet. You have that indirect tank that's going to alleviate the the cold water sandwich rather. It also allows you to have both domestic and boiler simultaneously, right? It's going to make it such that, just like you mentioned, you'll have a quicker heating and domestic hot water calls than you otherwise would with your traditional combi type system. You have a built-in primary secondary, so you don't have to worry about putzing around with manifolds, and it feels like a classic design that all the guys who've been doing this for so long are more familiar with. You don't have that three-way bypass, and you don't have the issues associated to it. So that's one component that is no longer a fail component. And then another component we talked about that's no longer a fail component is because you're not using a flame sensor or a traditional flame sensor, the rod, you're using the CAD cell, which ultimately is not affected by the flame whatsoever. So it's really never going to be fail. And then on top of it, you have the access panels to make it just easy as possible. I mean, there's a ton of stuff here.
That's it. We wanted to make it simple and serviceable. That was the name of the game, and I think we accomplished what we were going for. We've had a lot of success with these units in the last 5 or 6 years that we've been selling them.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. All right, I don't want to get too crazy with anything else. Why don't you really quickly? I know you got the wall hungs. You want to just give the real quick on the wall hungs, and we'll tie it off.
Yeah, so the wall hung systems were actually what we had before we designed the floor boiler. So we have a tested and proven wall hung product. It has the same heat exchanger on the domestic side. Similar to other wall hungs, we still need primary, secondary piping to our wall hung boilers, and there's still a three-way valve, which we mentioned, the exercise function to give it a little bit more reliability inside of our wall.
You and I mentioned that before we got on here, so why don't you explain? I don't know if we mentioned the exercise.
So as we said, the floor boiler does not have a three-way valve. There's a lot of benefits to that. In the wall hung system, we've been selling our wall hung for over a decade now. So with our wall hung system, it is more traditional to the sense of the three-way valve, primary, secondary piping, much like just about everybody else on a wall hung combi. Now, the benefit of our three-way valve is it has an exercise function. So on a daily basis, the three-way valve will exercise itself so it isn't getting stuck in one position or the other. Although it's still a moving component inside of the boiler, that's given us a little bit more durability during processing and making sure that we're always able to go from heating to domestic and domestic to heating. Now, with that said, we still have the shell and coil heat exchanger, so you still do have a bit of a buffer or some hot storage that's waiting for a call. And the other big thing, whether it be wall or floor, with that shell and coil design, the passageways are much wider, which we didn't touch on. That's another benefit. Flat plate or brazed plate heat exchangers are great for transferring heat, but they're normally condensed, much like, again, what we've talked about overall with high efficiency boilers is condensing the footprint of the unit. We've done that historically with flat plate heat exchangers on the domestic side of combi systems. So they transfer heat very well, but they're very tight. Their passageways are narrow, and they have a tendency to build, scale, restrict flow, and eventually fail on you. With either our wall hung or our floor stand combi, we have that shell and coil design, and the coil internally is 3/4 inch corrugated stainless steel pipe. So versus a flat plate or a brazed plate, there's a lot less likelihood of failure, scale buildup, restriction of flow, or callbacks to flush out a flat plate. We do still recommend flushing out our shell and coil, but again, the passageways are much wider, so a lot less likelihood for restriction of flow and scale buildup.
Got it. All right. So the floor mat is great. The wall hung is great. You guys thought of it all.
That's
all right.
right.
Anything else before we jump off? You think we nailed it?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would touch on is our reps, you being one of them, Rathe Associates, along with a long list of other reps throughout the country, who do a great job with their local territories. We have, again, Rathe Associates, Greg Rathe on the phone right now. Rathe does a great job servicing their local markets, much like all of our other Bradford White and Laars heating systems reps. We do have training capabilities, whether it's in a rep warehouse or at our facilities in Middleville or Rochester. So yeah, overall, just a nice family feel, whether you're dealing with Bradford White or you're dealing with Laars. We've got a great representation through our rep agencies across the country, training capabilities, servicing capabilities. Really, our mindset is we build products and we sell them, but that's not where it ends. We want to support the product after the fact, and our reps do a great job with supporting product along with our internal staff as a team to support our end users. And with that said, we do have some online resources, Bradford White for the Pro or Laars Pro, that you can take advantage of. There's a lot of training modules, servicing modules, combustion testing, venting, all sorts of that type of stuff, along with your normal IOMs, your data sheets, and everything that you would need during an install. So again, we have a lot of back end and rep support that really takes us above and beyond, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I guess I might as well mention the things that we do over here, right? So we do the training. We do a lot of training over here, a couple times every month with the FT units, the mascots, the brutes. So yeah, basic training, more advanced training, so what we call Laars Pro training. We've got the parts available. We have got parts at a lot of our distributors. We actually do combustion analysis training. So, all these units, it's very critical how you install them, like we mentioned a couple of times, and combustion analysis and proper startup is a key component. So we do training on that as well. Listen, we'll meet people up on job sites. We do it all the time, help people size up the systems. And, we rep 20 different lines. I pretty much sum it up as everything in the mechanical room for a hydronic heating system, between the boiler, water heater, expansion tanks, hydro separators, pumps, controls, you name it, the whole kit and caboodle. So that's our thing. So
yes, sir.
All right, Wes, that was fun. I'm glad you jumped on with me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you, Greg.
All right, we'll figure out another one and we'll get you on again soon.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thanks a lot, Wes. I'll catch you later, man.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.